Hey everyone, Intern here. I wanted to make a video about Void Scarred because currently on the beta, sort of regardless of any tuning that happened, Void Scarred is kind of just running into a problem that is partially the consequence of being sort of restricted to Void Blade and Hungering Slash. With current tuning, I don't really want to talk about tuning that much, but I do think it's important to point out because I think it incorporates into the sort of design issues. Annihilator currently with the sort of patchwork beta sims that we have, Annihilator is kind of knocking Void Scarred out of the park in terms of damage. And a lot of that is just because of tuning, but a lot of that is just because of basic design. And the fact that Annihilator can really play any build at once. It can play a melee build. It probably doesn't take the hunt, and I'll kind of get into why. But with Void Scarred, if I'm playing Void Scarred, I'm playing these melee talents. And so I kind of just want to dive into sort of why Void Scarred has this problem and sort of ways that we can go about fixing it. And obviously, part of what they could do to, quote unquote, fix Void Scarred is just increase some of these tuning knobs, like increase the cosmic damage from blind focus, or increase the mastery bonus from enduring torment. Like there's a bunch of tuning knobs in the Void Scarred tree that would, enable it to do more damage. Like, I mean, I'm level 80, so these numbers, like, flat damage numbers don't mean much because I'm level 80, but Void Scar just does less damage than Annihilator. And a big reason for that is partially because the Hunt is a very cool ability to look at, but in reality, the Hunt really isn't doing that much. The Hunt, while the charge is very strong, like just having that gap closer was very strong for Havoc, when we're playing a ranged class, yes, this is it's enabling me to get in from longer ranges to do my melee combo, but in the past, the Hunt also gave you healing, when it hit your target. Like, it gave you leech for, like, whatever amount of seconds. Which, I mean, obviously that's not a damage boost, but it added to the flavor a little bit. It's doing cosmic damage to up to 5 enemies in your path. So, in comparison to the rest of our spec, this isn't a super exciting button. Disregarding issues with, like, Reap and Cull and Eradicate not really being strong buttons, that's just a tuning thing. Reap just needs like a flat 20% buff, and then we can start. Reap will actually be a button that we might like to press. Barring issues with, like, I've seen a lot of people suggest Reap should do some amount of cleave. I think that's a decent idea on paper, provided Eradicate gets compensated in some way or like gets something added to it. But focusing on our melee talents here, and specifically the Hunt, there was a talent back in Dragonflight, and I believe it was also a Shadowlands conduit, but I don't know that for certain, that the Hunt, and this is more of a band-aid, but what I would like to see is maybe moving the Hunt up a node, like just moving this stuff up a node, or maybe, putting singular strikes into Hungering Slash or something like that, and potentially putting a choice node under the Hunt to sort of amplify it in some way that would make it more appealing for Void Scarred to use. Because as of right now, Void Scarred's taking the Hunt because it is one of the things that, is proccing a Void Surge. But Annihilator doesn't touch this at all because it just isn't worth taking, because it's not doing anything for them besides just this damage, which gives them more talent versatility with taking kind of the stuff over here with Calamitous and Devourer's Edge. And potentially another point in Void Rage. So what I'd like to see kind of happen to sort of alleviate Void Scar's issues a little bit is put a choice node under the Hunt that kind of can play into Mythic Plus versus single target, or sort of like, or at the very least kind of play into the encounters that you're wanting to sort of interact with, sort of how Soul Glutton and Emptiness work, where, you know, Soul Glutton's going to make a lot more sense in maybe a Mythic Plus environment, where in an environment where I'm pulling separate packs to the point of wanting to have these shorter metas because maybe my packs aren't living as long and I'm able to have a meta, you know, more frequently for each pack and it would line up in that way. Or I'm doing big pulls and, you know, I just take Emptiness because that just makes more sense to take if I'm like maybe doing a push key. And there's a lot of scenarios where these two talents work really nicely as a choice node, and it actually does feel like this choice is meaningful. I'd like to kind of see the same thing for the hunt, where, you know, maybe I want to spec into cooldown reduction for the hunt because it would enable me to get more void surges, which would help my AoE in dungeons where the hunt isn't this massive AoE button. And then maybe add like a single target node of, I mean, it could just generally be a flat buff to the hunt in terms of damage. You know, or maybe the hunt shatters 5 soul fragments. Like the hunt generating soul fragments either on its target or depending on how many targets it hits would genuinely be really good for this spec and this hero talent tree to help that sort of smoothness of gameplay, which generally would result in better damage assuming tuning is worked out. Something that I would like to see incorporated into the hunt is on that choice node that I was kind of talking about, in terms of buffing the hunt rather than giving it cooldown reduction, is the Night Fae legendary Blazing Slaughter, which, if you remember, if you played back in Shadowlands for Havoc, the hunt engulfs you with Immolation Aura upon reaching your target, so in our case that would just be Soul Immolation. And you gain 4% agility for 12 seconds for each enemy hit. Obviously this would be Intellect. I honestly could even see this being Mastery. But enabling the hunt to be a button that I'm excited about pressing, not just because, you know, not just because it looks cool and I get to do my little dash, but because I'm getting something out of it. I'm getting something out of it beyond just doing a Void Surge. And having that stat boost that scales well in both single target and especially in AoE, while giving us resource generation by triggering a Soul Immolation, would be so good for this spec. And I really also like the idea of the hunt shattering soul fragments from targets that it hits. And just reworking the hunt to be... I think the core functionality of hunt is good, it just needs to be improved. It needs to benefit the spec in some way that works for how the spec is being designed, which is focused around fury and soul efficiency. A big point of skill expression for Devourer is being able to efficiently generate soul fragments and consuming them in a way that gets you not just into Void meta, but gets you your collapsing star casts while you're in Void meta. That to me is the most important thing about this spec, is fury generation and soul economy. And for Void Scar to catch up to Annihilator, obviously not just in numbers, but in design, the issues lie in the tree as well. But I think our biggest culprit here is the hunt. I think Hungering Slash, because Hungering Slash already shatters 2 soul fragments, and I think this combo of Void Blade and Hungering Slash is good. And then I can go back in, do it again. And I think that's a good feedback loop. So I don't think Hungering Slash and Void Blade need to be changed. I just think the hunt needs to be changed for this to work. Specifically talking about the Void Scar tree, the main issues I have with this tree are primarily the out of demon form talents. While these are just tuning knobs at the end of the day, a large part of the power in this spec is in meta. It is inside Void Metamorphosis, and when I'm in Void Metamorphosis, these 2 talents are gone. I'm not gaining anything from these talents. And while that's okay on paper, majority of our damage, at least before sort of the tuning changes this week, the vast majority of our damage was coming from Collapsing Star. So having talents that aren't benefiting me in Void form or in Void meta. The only talents in here that are benefiting me in Void meta is Blind Focus, which is doubled well in meta. And then, you know, you have like your Student of Suffering and like the stuff that is a kind of agnostic to Void meta, like it works in both. I am fine with these working outside of meta, but I would really like to see something incorporated that is buffing me inside of meta beyond just Blind Focus. Maybe I get you. I would like the idea of Enduring Torment giving me mastery outside of meta, and then maybe give me haste inside of meta, or give me crit, or even versatility. It really give me some way to interact with and feel better about going into Void meta beyond just, oh, I just lost 10% mastery and 8% intellect, but I have an extra 3% cosmic damage. I don't want to feel like I'm trading off when I'm playing the spec as it's intended. And this works for Havoc, partially because Havoc is strong outside of meta. Havoc likes to be in meta, but Havoc is still strong and can do good damage outside of it. While Devourer, we're ramping up to meta. Yes, in Void Scarred, we have our out of meta abilities that are probably gonna be a little stronger for Void Scarred than for Annihilator, simply because we're taking the hunt, which is a button we can just press outside of meta that Annihilator just doesn't. But Annihilator still gets its Voidfall Meteors, which already do good damage. They're doing it. They have a dot on them. You know, there's a lot of buffs, just straight damage in this tree that Void Scarred is relying on from Void Surges, which probably just need a buff unto themselves as well. But a lot of it is just coming down to design that I think just needs a little bit of tweaking. I don't have the numbers on these two talents right now, but I would also like to see that, because, I mean, 10% mastery is, especially with how good mastery is now, you're probably only taking a Student of Suffering over Flamebound, unless there's some magic world where, you know, Hungering Slot, like, if you're playing Void Scarred in AoE, this is probably kind of what you're working with a little bit. But tuning-wise, Void Scarred's just behind. But I would like to see, you know, in a single target world, maybe we take Devourer's Bite. Obviously, you're not going to take Eradicate in single target. I don't think it's intended for you to take Eradicate in single target anyway. But Devourer's Bite, I like Devourer's Bite in a sense, beyond the fact that it's still kind of gated behind this AoE node that costs 2 points. I'd like to see Devourer's Bite maybe move over where Soulforged Blades is, and probably just see a rework to Soulforged Blades, maybe. It would just kind of have to come down to the numbers for this, but we're not really interacting with crit, especially with Hungering Slash and Void Blade. This is just a way for them to crit. It's not... We don't have Know Your Enemy from Havoc where we're dealing crit damage based on our crit chance. You know, we're not... That's not a thing we have beyond just getting it in Collapsing Star just for Collapsing Star in our Apex talent. There's just some design issues there. I mean, and this is just a video focusing on Void Scarred, but there's a few other things that need to be changed as well. But just for focusing on Void Scarred, these are kind of the things I'd like to see changed, especially with the hunt. The hunt is our... If I can encourage anyone to submit feedback for anything, it is to encourage... I don't want the hunt to get removed. I really like the hunt. I don't want the hunt to become... I don't even want it to get baseline changed necessarily. I want to be encouraged to take the hunt and also be able to have a choice of giving it something to do. Whether that be giving it Blazing Slaughter, where I'm getting a bunch of stats depending on the targets I hit, but still getting stats if I hit one target, and, you know, maybe proc a Soul Immo for some generation, or something like a cooldown reduction by killing an enemy with the hunt. You know, giving me those options would be really cool, especially for a tree like Void Scarred, where I'm encouraged to press these buttons all the time, because, especially in meta, because I'm going to get those Void Surges. But for now, I think that's a good explanation of kind of what I'm kind of looking to get out of Void Scarred. And hopefully we kind of see some changes to that coming in the next few weeks with beta. But for now, I think I will say farewell, and I hope you all have a nice day.